Is the audience microphone on?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to put on your microphone, please?
Just to make sure it's showing. Whoa. Little feedback.
You can almost write the script.
Okay. I want to welcome you all to the Community Preservation Committee's Needs Assessment meeting. And I'm just going to mention a little bit about the Community Preservation Act and what it is and what it might mean to you. And but before I start, I'm going to have each member of the committee introduce themselves and tell us their area of specialty or why they're on the committee. So we'll start down there with Andrea.
I'm Andrea Johnson, and I am a member of the Groveland Planning Board. I represent.
Bob Guptill, I'm representing the Open Space and Trails Committee, but also because Bruce Adams is not here today, I'm also representing the Affordable Housing Committee. I'm on both of them.
I am Tom Minicello, and I represent the Finance Committee.
Claire Walsh, Historical Commission.
Joe Demore, Board of Selectmen.
I'm Mike Dempsey, and I represent the Groveland Conservation Commission.
Pam Blackie, representing Recreation.
Kathleen Kearney, representing the Groveland Housing Authority, and I'm also on the Library Board of Trustees.
Okay. We're going to start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll join us.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thanks for coming tonight. I'm not sure if perhaps you've heard of the Community Preservation Act in Groveland. We've had community preservation for nearly 10 years. And so if you've been to town meeting, you've heard of, I hope you've heard of some of the many projects that we've funded, that you funded, actually, under the Community Preservation Act here in Groveland. The idea with the Community Preservation Act is we take a vote to put aside 3%, a 3% surcharge on our local property taxes. And then this money gets matched by the state, and then we get to spend it on certain categories. The categories are housing, affordable housing, open space, historic preservation, and recreation. So there's some expenditure conditions there, and what I've done is I made a copy of this this little handout here. It talks about the basics of the Community Preservation Act, and it's on the back table, so if you didn't get one, make sure you get one. And for each category, it talks about some of the things that need to be met. In particular, the way that it works is the community preservation money is managed by us. We're the Community Preservation Committee, so under the state and under the local bylaw, we were established with members from different boards who have something to do with some of the 4 areas. And so our job is to listen to what needs to be done in the community. So that's why we're having our needs assessment tonight, to hear what ideas you might have. In addition to that, we also can bring proposals forward under any of the 4 areas. So the other thing that you'll find on the back table is our 2015 Community Preservation Request for Proposals, and that details quite a bit of detail in there about what we're looking for in a proposal. And any community group can put a proposal before us, and we collect them, we'll be collecting them this year by December 31st. What we do is then we take the proposals that we've received, and we go over them, we read them ourselves, and then we listen to each group. We have each group come before us and tell us a little bit more about their proposal, answer some questions, and then we make recommendations based on our criteria, which is mostly in that RFP, what we recommend to be funded by town meeting. Once we've done that, we put a warrant article together, it gets on town meeting warrant, and then it goes before the whole town to vote on it. So that's the typical process. We do that every year. And pretty much every year, we've had at least one proposal to fund. So we're hoping that this year, we can generate some more interest, and we can hear about some things that we don't necessarily know about, some of the things that some other groups feel are important for the town of Groveland to fund or to consider funding in any of these 4 areas. So, I think what we're going to do is, we are going to allow you to ask general questions, and then if there's any groups here who are definitely interested in putting a proposal together, and you want to ask specific questions about doing a proposal or your idea, or you know, I know there's a few people here who are intending on putting a proposal in, and we want to hear from you what your proposal is. The idea is that we want to be prepared as possible as a committee to understand what the needs are and what your thoughts are. And it may be that, you know, more than one group is interested in a particular area, or your group's needs may coincide with some of the needs that we already know about. So I think there would be some kind of collaborative effort here we're hoping for that this meeting may generate. So a couple other handouts out on the back that you might want to take or take a look at later. There's a handout there about a project that was done in Hamilton. I think started in 2012, and it was the revitalization of a park and playground, Patton Park in Hamilton. It's a good article, so if you're interested in recreation as your field, make sure you grab one of those. And then the other handy handout back there is our project allowable? And so it's good to look at, because it's got the 4 areas of open space, historic, recreation, and housing, but it also has whether you can acquire them, whether you can create them, whether you can preserve them, whether you can support them, or rehabilitate projects in any of those 4 areas. And then it talks a little bit more about it. So that's a nice handout to have. But as I say, we'll start out by opening the meeting to general questions, and certainly if anyone up here on the committee wants to pitch in or ask a question also, we'll do that. And then I know that we have at least one person here who's going to tell us about one of their projects, so I'll probably start with that one, but certainly, you know, we'll give everybody enough time to talk or ask questions about particular projects. Yeah, sure.
I'd like to just chime in very, very briefly, and then we'll open it up. I just wanted to clarify that this is a needs assessment meeting. It's not a proposal writing meeting or a submission of proposals. After a needs assessment, this board will invite people to submit proposals if we feel that it's something that would be appropriate. Keep in mind that the only authority in this town that can approve a project is town meeting. Town meeting is when the townspeople convene and they create this legislative body that temporarily exists for that one evening and has awesome powers. And that evening is when people will ultimately know if their proposals are going to be accepted or not. Now, keep also in mind that it has been expressed by the Board of Selectmen that in addition to this particular board, when proposals are submitted, we would like either this board or the chair or individually, depending on how you coordinate with the chair of this board, to present those ideas initially to the to the Board of Selectmen, just so that we're aware of what is being planned, so that the Board of Selectmen will have an opportunity to also weigh in on what is being proposed. Because this particular board is not an autonomous board with the authority to allow the funds to be expended. This is only an advisory board. They will recommend at town meeting the proposals, but they should also, and I think we're gonna work together in partnership, they will also recommend to the Board of Selectmen certain proposals. So I hope that that's clear, and certainly we'll open it up to the floor. Thank you, Mike.
Sure, thank you, Joe. So we'll start with general questions. If you have any general questions about CPA or our process here in Groveland, we're more than happy to try to answer your questions. Yes?
I would like you to tell the board about the proposition the town made to me 18 months ago, total story.
Yes. Yes, I believe that the board is aware of it. This is related to the purchase of the Mattingly parcel.
Right.
And, you know, I gave that update. We had an update at our last meeting that we are basically waiting to purchase it until we're get the okay from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program.
I was told that the money was in the bank.
Yes, the
And
money,
it's been 18 months since you signed
Sure.
the S&P.
yes, yes.
So what is the problem?
Well, we're waiting on two things. One is Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program is waiting to approve the turtle mitigation that's gonna take place on your property. So that's nearly done. And the second thing that we're waiting for is another grant that the town is gonna get from the federal government. It's under the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So unfortunately, because it's a federal grant, it's hard to really tell how long it's gonna take. I'm hoping and expecting that we should know about this in the next 2 to 6 weeks.
I hope to know, too,
Yes.
because otherwise we're gonna have problems.
Yes, yes, I realize that. Thank you.
Probably for the record, we should have people announce who they are.
Yeah, sure. Yes,
Is this only a needs assessment meeting? We were told by Pat Shana to come to this,
okay.
to talk about a waiver. That's not here.
I'm not too sure we're supposed to be here tonight. Our house burnt down, well, no, our house burnt down in March, and
Oh, okay.
aside from finding
No.
an insurance company, you know, we didn't know what kind of, he said
No.
to go, no?
This is not the Conservation Commission.
When does the Conservation Commission meet?
Wednesday, November 12th.
I'm gonna kill Pasquino. With your permission, of course.
We can't grant it with the microphones on.
On a proposal.
Sure.
Okay. I live on Johnson's Pond.
Could you state your name, sir, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, my name is James Y. Logan, okay, I've been living in Groveland since 1976. As you know, I live next to BC Park, I don't know if anybody may not, I don't know, I live next to BC Park, and excuse me for not standing up, I got a bad leg, she has too. And Johnson's Pond, from what I've done a lot of research on this, I come to find out that all ponds die. That I didn't know, but ponds die, they all eventually die. But I'm hoping Johnson Pond has a slow death. Unfortunately, one of the things I do is I pick up, because I live 40 feet from the water maybe, I pick up empty beer cans, I pick up God only knows what from people who, it all comes from my direction. Maybe it's, no matter what it is, it's always beer bottles or and conch shells, the Chinese shells, I don't know if you people have heard about this. I picked up, this is over 10,000 10,000 I picked up, okay, with a sucker thing, there's that many, they're still out there. What I wanna know is this, I found out that Groveland does not own Johnson's Pond, and that it's owned by Haverhill. So I went to Haverhill, and I said, what can we do about cleaning up Johnson's Pond, because the weeds are literally taking it over.
Mhm.
And they said absolutely nothing. I said, but you own the water rights. And they said, yes, we do, but we're not gonna do anything. In fact, we're not even gonna fix they have a water mill down there or something, a building.
Pumping station.
He said, we don't even have the money to fix that. It's a dead issue.
Yep.
I'm wondering if we can get the state somehow, the heck with Haverhill, state somehow to come in and, try and maybe get the, what is it, not the National Guard, the engineers,
Yeah,
Commissioner
Army
Corps,
Corps.
to come in and maybe like clean it out, get rid of the weed, because
Mhm.
it is a fine kettle of fish, because that's what it is, it's a kettle. And there's bass there, but I like to get it cleaned up, so make it more, because we have animals, we have deer, beaver, foxes, as VC Park has foxes, squirrels, turkeys, you name it, we got turtles, snapping. We got them, I got a big sign myself, in my, as you drive in, it says deer, and then it says so-and-so crossing, everything's crossing.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I just wondered if there's something we can do in Town of Groveland, maybe push the state to try to clean up, Johnston, a little bit.
Well, you know, this is my area of concern, conservation, so I'm more than happy to address it. You know, I think that Conservation Commission is aware of the problem. We're aware of the problem, particularly on the Washington Street end of the pond, you know, some of the growth that's taking place in there. Some of it's due to pollution that happens because of septic systems that get worn out, you know, that type of thing. So we're pretty aware of it. We're pretty aware of that whole section there stretching into Meadow Pond. If you've seen Meadow Pond on the other side of Uptack
Across the
Road,
street,
it's
no.
even worse, you know. So we don't want to see it turn into just a swamp, because that's kind of the direction that it's going in. So I can tell you just briefly that the town is doing a watershed study of the whole Johnson's Creek from the Haverhill line, which is up above before Johnson's Pond, all the way down to the Merrimack River, per order of DEP. So, once that's done, I'm hoping that that will give us kind of a guideline as to what we can do, the kinds of things that we can do.
'Cause I know I was told that I can build, I have, you know, I can build on the footprint that was originally there.
Yes.
That's not the here.
But, I know, but anyway, but we wanna move the house further away from the water.
Yeah.
And Pasquina liked that idea. I think the commission, the conservation would like it also, but you fellows are not into it, so I think I'll just get up and leave.
Excuse me, Pat Skeena has office hours tonight.
Tommy?
He has office hours tonight. He's
Is
in
Pat
his
in here
office.
tonight?
Yeah, he is in.
Oh,
Right out that
Oh,
door,
thank you very
take a
much.
right.
I'm gonna go and say hello to
I
Pat.
wanna listen to what they're
Oh,
talking
boy.
about.
I'm sorry, I
No,
called
no
you
problem.
Say hello to Pat for us.
Thank you very much. Okay, I appreciate it.
Thanks for your
I'm glad I
ideas.
can stay here.
Bye.
I'm a little sleepy.
Do we have any other
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
general questions? Any other general questions? Yes.
When do you expect that the needs assessment will get to the point where proposals are accepted and discussed and then go to town meeting? Like, what's the approximate
Timeline.
Timeline, yeah.
Yes. Well, the timeline for this year is the proposal, the request for proposals are out there. So our proposals for anything we discuss tonight or anything that doesn't get discussed tonight will all be due December 31st. So we want in our hand a full proposal from anybody who wants to do something by December 31st. Then we spend probably the next 6 weeks after that reviewing them and making our final recommendation to the selectmen. Then that gets put on the town warrant or somewhere around the middle of February, and then we bring it up at town meeting. So the critical time right now is really the next 2 months to get your proposal together.
If your proposal is in early, do you get to come in and discuss
Yes,
before that?
yes.
It's not like
During that
you-
6-week period, we'll have whoever has submitted a proposal to us will come in and talk with us about it.
And
So
there
technically
is,
after January,
Yes.
Aaron.
and there is a template on how to put together a
My
proposal.
proposal is ready.
I'm sure it is. With footnotes. Very good.
Yes,
Hi, I'm Joe Sullivan.
Hi.
Been a resident since '96. So I just had a question. So assuming it gets approved if the warrant gets approved at the town meeting, how much longer after that will the funds be released or?
usually it's July 1. So whatever we vote at town meeting will be available at the start of the next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess what we'll do is we'll start with Mike Davis. He's going to tell us a little bit about the Groveland Community Trail project that I know he's planning on wanting to put a proposal together, so,
Just talk right here?
yeah.
Great. Well, thanks again, Mike and the CPC for allowing us the opportunity tonight. For those unaware of the ongoing project, Groveland Community Trail is a proposed shared use path, recreational path, in 2 segments, 3.25 miles from this area here at Town Hall, along Main Street, down to Bates Bridge, along the river, past Shanahan Field, the former SD lumber property, and then diverting southeast along the utility corridor currently owned and operated by National Grid. When you think about that footprint, the trail would in essence connect the Pines, Town Hall, Police Fire, Perry Park School, Elm Park, Groveland Diner, walking access to Haverhill, vistas along the river, Shanahan Field, then along the corridor, Future Center Street Greenway, Bagnell Elementary School, Crane Estate down at King Street, and ultimately a connection into Georgetown, which would present an opportunity for Groveland to connect into a regional network extending through Topsfield and Danvers and Wenham and all the way down essentially to Boston. Late 2013, or was it early 2014, we approached CPC for a warrant article for this April's 2014 town meeting. We requested $150,000 for initial design work. That warrant was approved by the committee. We brought it to town meeting with overwhelming verbal support from those present. We had a favorable recommendation from both the Board of Selectmen and Finance. We passed that warrant. So we have had these funds available and in coordination with the town finance director, been applying these in the 2 areas as requested. One for some title work with an attorney to essentially give us a clean bill of health on the right-of-way from Main Street to King Street along the National Grid corridor. They essentially own that property free and clear, and there's no encumbrances for us to develop the proposed trail. The second piece was to contract with an engineer, which we did in July. Again, in coordination with the finance director. Through an RFP process, we partnered with Baselock and Thorndike. They're based in Burlington, so FST, really for 2 main reasons. One, their leadership in the trail design space regionally, and also a very aggressive approach to define Groveland as a leader in regional trail development. What they've proposed to us and what we'll have by January of 2015, with the funds currently approved and being spent, is a 25% MassDOT ready design for the rail trail segment. Again, from Main Street to King Street, and a completed 10% design for the on-road portion from this area to SD's. We had essentially come to the committee last year with thoughts of doing a 10% design for the entire project, and based on the proposal and subsequent conversations with FST, it makes much more sense to front-load the 25% design for the rail trail piece and scale back to just the 10% on the on-road piece. The main reasons being the rail trail segment is a much more simpler design. The ownership is free and clear with National Grid. And the leasing agreement that we'll ultimately get to with National Grid is a very long process. This 25% design will jumpstart that, as well as getting us in the queue for MassDOT funding. A couple questions were raised on the on-road portion, which lead us to believe we should be a little more thoughtful in that segment, one being the Bates Bridge intersection. There's questions around the ability for it to accommodate certain pedestrian and bicycle traffic, and the one-way Main Street segment along the river accommodate two-way bike traffic. So those are things we'll have to be a little more thoughtful to, possibly rerouting along that way. So based on guidance from FSD and ongoing discussions with the town plan instructor, we will be approaching this committee for likely $150,000 on the timeline that Mike had outlined for 2015 warrant. That 150 will bring us to a full 100% design for the rail trail segment. That 25% design will be a MassDOT ready design to submit to MassDOT to get into the funding queue and to formally submit to National Grid for the design and leasing discussions. We will also have a 10% design complete for the on-road portion, again, from Town Hall to Estes. Between now and April 2015, we feel very confident in the ability to continue our positive momentum, both with the local boards and also the residents in town. Again, coming off a very strong vote this year and support from both the Board of Selectmen and Finance, we're confident that we can repeat that in 2015. We have a very strong Facebook following, approaching almost 500 residents locally supporting the project on Facebook. We have awareness and positive reactions from both Senator Bruce Tarr and Representative Lenny Mira. Both are committed to engaging with us to explore alternative funding modes once we get to these 25% design milestones and formally submitted. We have ongoing support and alignment with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission and the Essex National Heritage Group. We continue to meet with the MVPC quarterly in alignment with Bradford and Georgetown, which the trail will connect through the former Georgetown Branch rail corridor. Also between now and April, we will, in conjunction with the FST, the engineer, lead multiple public engagement awareness sessions in coordination with FST, driven by online announcements, newspaper postings, and certain direct mailings. And again, we will continue as an open space and trail committee to lead that public engagement effort. And by April 2015, so by the time we'll be requesting residents to vote on hopefully the funds that we have on the warrant, at that time we'll have a very clear, defined 25% design complete for the rail trail segment and a 10% design for the on-road. We will have continued growing the public awareness, the engagement, and by that time we've solicited a lot of feedback from certain uniquely interested, property owners with adjacent properties to the trail and certain boards. And overall, a very clear vision of what $2015 will be applied to and a more definitive timeline. That's what you all can expect.
Could I ask a question, Mike? I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but you came to us for $150,000 from capital preservation funds last year for the design.
Correct.
And it was a 3.25 mile trail.
Correct.
That connects to what existing trails now?
There's no existing trail.
No existing trail, so it's 3.25, and we've committed 150,000, you're going to ask for another 150,000. And the ultimate cost for this 3.25 miles was in the paperwork that you distributed at the last meeting. How many millions was that?
So the estimated contribution from the town still remains, and this is an estimate, 500 to 550,000 for a completed design.
For completed design.
For completed design.
And
those
is there?
funds will then be matched by the state at again, from experiences with other towns and conversations with the engineer, 8 to 10-fold by the state, which would be upwards of $3 to $4 million.
And also, that's just taxpayers' money.
Correct.
But also, what was, at the time we had asked what your plan was for maintenance of these trails. and the cost per year, approximate cost per year for maintenance of these trails?
So I don't have an answer for that
Okay,
now.
okay, just wondering if there had been any movement forward on going forward and how they would be maintained.
Right, that's not a question at this point that we would have to.
Okay,
The,
thank
just,
you.
I'm sorry, I thought you were,
I'm finished
good questions,
for
thank you.
now.
The gestation period, the completion of this project is measured over what, 5, 8 years
So that was,
typically?
yes,
Okay.
thereabouts, but
And-
again, it's,
And the estimated total expenditure, including the 150 already committed and potentially the additional 150 for 2015, it's all in, the 500 includes that?
correct.
Okay. The benchmarks of 10% and 25%, those are trigger points that will trigger additional engagement with the state?
Yep.
For additional money, is that correct?
So the 25% design is a MassDOT and National Grid recognized design point, allows a formal submission by the town of Groveland through the engineer to enter into the very lengthy negotiations, both for federal funding through MassDOT and through the licensing and design consideration from National Grid.
What's your very next step? Because this is not like building a playground. This is a very complicated project. You have multiple jurisdictions. You have National Grid, you have the state, you have the county, you have the town, you have Mass Department of Transportation. So what is your very next step? What are we gonna see from your group?
The most significant milestone that just happened was the contracting with the engineer, and we're awaiting a more definitive timeline. They will be out on site as the foliage wraps up to do the wetland flagging and the field survey, which will drive the design. So the design is the next milestone.
And I would ask as a courtesy and certainly as a protocol that you do keep through this chair, through this board, the Board of Selectmen, informed as much as possible, because this is a significant project.
Definitely.
And we don't want to be in a position where we can't field questions from the townspeople as to what's going on with this project, because it's going through this board, and then it ends up on a warrant article, and we're left in the lurch.
So, sorry.
Yes,
So on that point specifically, FST will be leading in conjunction with us a public engagement plan which would do just that.
Right.
Engage the different boards, engage the uniquely budding property owners, Whitestone Village specifically, and National Grid. So they really help run the formal engagement piece, which would include what you just mentioned.
thank you for reminding me, that's where we get our first phone calls, is the butters. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mike about that proposal? Okay, so, well, we'll look forward to seeing that, Mike, and thank you for taking the time to give us an update on it. And we're excited about it so far. That's great.
Appreciate it, thank you.
So, we're ready to hear from any other groups that want to tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are. Maybe, Erin, you want to tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are?
My name is Erin Pincone. I've lived in Groveland my entire life. I currently am here as president for Groveland Baseball League. We've also got a couple of other baseball representatives here, as well as 2 townspeople that are going to work on the project to revitalize Washington Park. In the length of time that I have played at the park with my children, there have really not been any significant updates to the property. For the majority of the field work, the Baseball League as a board has taken care of all of the maintenance of the fields, with the exception of the grass cutting, which the town does do for us. But we have provided consistent maintenance to the property for all of the baseball needs. At this time, there are extensive infrastructure updates that really need to be taken care of at the park. I have a long list of items that we really need to have addressed, the largest of which is the playground. The playground at our facility is really not very safe. It doesn't currently meet any safety codes. The surfacing on the property is not adequate. It also does not have handicap accessibility. So our proposal would include a complete overhaul of the playground, as well as repairs to, much needed repairs to the fencing, as it is also unsafe and dysfunctional as it is. Some repairs to the dugouts that were installed and really need to also have maintenance because they're rotting and falling apart. We'd also like to add a few things to the park to make it inviting to increase participation in our program, and to make it a really nice place to play baseball. I know that we're trying to bring Groveland baseball in a slightly different direction, where we will be playing more baseball with more towns, which will bring people to our park. And we are, as a board, quite proud of our park conditions as they are, but we also know that they can be a lot better. So we're looking for funding to revitalize Washington Park and make it something that can be a great community asset with the new playground. It will, our initial design has a toddler area, which there are no current playgrounds in town that I'm aware of that have a toddler area, as well as making our baseball fields updated and really more of a safe design. So that's where that's what our proposal will include. It is simple, I suppose, as compared to the railroad project, but nonetheless, it is a costly venture that Groveland Baseball just does not have the funds to do by ourselves. So we are looking for help.
You do some amount of fundraising as it is, do you?
We do. Our current fundraising monies were appropriated to the installation, the acquisition and installation of the scoreboard that last week we just got funding, installation approval from the Board of Selectmen, as well as the addition of an outfield fence to separate the two fields that are currently openly joined. So we do a lot for the park. Groveland Baseball did some fundraising, but as a board, we had to give the rest of the money to purchase the scoreboard, which was $4,000. The installation of the outfield fence is another $4,000. We are not a wealthy program. We did acquire our 501c3 this past year, so we're doing what we can.
Relationship with your abutters? That's bad luck if you
I
kill.
believe so. I believe so. I know that we comply with the 9 o'clock lights out policy. We don't typically use the announcement program all the time. I mean, there are days, opening day is one of them. AAA night is another one that we use the PA system. Being that I'm a brand new president, I don't have anybody coming to me yet, but Joe is a former president. Maybe you can.
Well, I
speak
congratulate
to
you. You're the
that
first woman to be president of the Groveland Baseball.
Thank you.
That's a turning point to this town. Congratulations, Sarah.
So we have a lot of work to do at the park, and we really need a lot of help and funding to get it done.
And now is the time to eliminate term limits on your position.
Would your proposal also address the parking lot?
Yes, actually, it does. The westernmost portion of the parking lot does need to be resurfaced. I've had a couple of people come out and give us estimates to do that in a couple of different ways. The entrance to that parking lot section is also in need of repairs because
Right.
it's really awful.
Have you talked to Bobby Arcelian about it?
I don't know that anybody has.
Be a good place to start, Aaron.
I mean, I have, this is total new way for us to go and get funding. I'm certainly open to any and all suggestions.
That would be my first suggestion about the parking lot
What's-
service.
What would Mr. Arcalian do for them other than to give them pointers and ideas as to how to pave it? He has no money or funds.
No, but ideas of, and who to go to. I think
Okay.
Claire had some paving done, and she sought out the best.
I mean, I
Prices.
had 4 paving companies that I've already talked to. So I've done the legwork, and
So-
companies as well.
So the western part of the parking lot that you're referring to, that's where the former skating rink was? And, well,
the
actually, it was tennis, there was
courts,
tennis there too.
where the buses
Yeah,
currently are parked.
that's all a hodgepodge. It's just bolted together pieces of land that have no common function or purpose. It all needs to be redone.
I just have a clarification. So the dugouts, they would have to be ripped down in order to get the CPA funds, what we were talking about last time. You
Yes,
can't repair anything.
right. It's a fine line, you know.
It's a good point.
And the fences, they can't be
Like,
patched.
tear 'em down
They have to be.
and build them again.
So you have to, you can't do repair, they have to be completely redone.
That's what,
So there's some cities and towns which use CPA to do all their deferred maintenance. And that's the thing that the legislature does not want, is to divert the money to doing maintenance and upkeep in a city or town. And that's why it has to be for new construction, new development, new acquisition, using the CPA money.
Costs a whole lot more.
is there a way
Doesn't make sense, does it?
to build an addition? Is there a way to build an addition to it, a dugout, like,
Potentially, yeah. I mean,
instead of?
the only, we can talk more offline about these type of questions. Usually, what I do is I'll look at what other towns have done and how they've done it. So, that's why I printed out that one about Hamilton, because I thought that would be a good guideline, for you. So, we can kind of look into it more about, as I say, because some of it's a fine line between what's maintenance and what's rehabilitation or restoration, So, and it will be probably up to this group to make that final decision. So, we want to work with you to make sure that what you come to us with is completely allowable. But, so far, everything you've said, sounds like it would fit in. For instance, a parking lot in and of itself, we would not fund. But if the parking lot is included as part of the overall project, then, it could be done. The other thing to keep in mind, and this is true for any project that anybody's gonna do, is all of the state procurement rules are in effect with whatever money you spend. So that means that, particularly if the project is over $25,000, the entire, anything you spend on the project has to be put out to bid. So that all takes place after July 1, if the project is approved at town meeting, and the finance director works with you to do that. But just be careful when you're speaking with vendors, that they understand that just because they've given you a quote doesn't mean anything. Because they would have to, if they are interested in doing the work, they would have to come back and work with the finance director when she puts out her request for proposals for whatever the work was. So that's important, just that nobody gets the wrong idea that, well, I gave you a proposal, I'm not gonna give you another one. Yes, there may be other requirements, that have to be met.
Can you suggest, or as a group, which one you would really like to work with based on, not just based on bottom line, cheapest price, like, but quality of work and rapport that you may have
The main
with
thing,
the people?
the main thing that we are interested in is the price. So typically, what others have done is, you'll talk to 2 or 3 vendors to get a general idea of what's out there. And then it's up to you. You pick a number that you're comfortable with, that a vendor says they can do the job that you want to do. And then, so that's gonna be your proposal. It's important because that's the amount of money you are gonna get. So what happens is then if that gets approved, if you got approved for, say, $50,000, then that's what you get, $50,000 to complete the project. Then, when the money is available in July, the finance director puts a bid out and says, you know, who's gonna bid to do this work, and then people come in. Usually, always, she has criteria, she has a whole different criteria about how to do it. And, you know, you would work with her to pick the best vendor to do the job. So, but it's important to make sure that you, put in your proposal to us enough funds to complete the work that you want to do.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to use
Yes.
all of those funds.
Yes, right,
Use
exactly.
Up to, and then it stays, the rest stays in capital preservation.
It's probably safe to say that for most of us who have projects and proposals in mind, and I've got a couple that I'll share, there's two components. One is the need, and the other one is the wish. The need is minimum, this is what I need to do, and the wish is this is what I'm wishing to do. What kind of proposal do you have, realistically? Is it a minimum need, and then we also would wish to do more, or what do you?
Yes, it is
It's
a
a
minimum
minimum need.
need, and there are a couple of things in there that would enhance our park that would be great
Okay.
to the whole program.
And I've known you for 3 years, do you know what that cost is? You probably have it down to the penny. And that's a
And
compliment.
you need to say it here.
Right now, I have an extensive list that needs to be done. I have estimates for all aspects of it. I didn't realize that we were gonna have to rip down the dugouts, that will have to be changed.
Sure.
I did not realize that we were gonna have to redo all of the fencing. That number is gonna be huge. There's a lot of fencing out there.
But the new fencing piece, between those two fields, we could make the argument that that's new construction, at least
Well,
that piece.
we've already, Groveland Baseball has already appropriated the funds with that.
But you may be able to divert those funds into doing the dugouts where that's something that wouldn't be covered. You know, and then you could repair the dugouts as opposed to building a new dugout.
And the scoreboard too.
Yeah, plus, put in your proposal that those are matching funds, that
Right.
you are doing that work. So if you, you know, encompass the whole proposal, including that work, and you're paying for these things, and you're asking for CPA money to pay for some of the other stuff.
Okay, so add in things that GBL has done, and we have, a donation to paint those dugouts when they are repaired
Mhm.
as well, so we can add in the
Yeah,
costs
in kind, yes.
when they are finished. Okay.
Personally encourage you, as you propose the playground, propose it as a community asset. Washington Park is owned by the town of Groveland. It's not just for the kids who are there with their baseball brothers. They're there, it's for anybody to come and use, and that's, I think, a very important piece.
That's value to the community.
And I know that Marissa, can speak to that aspect of it, and her, that's where she is spearheading the playground project. You want to talk about that?
Sure, so we talked to Steve Dibble from Dibble Parks, and he put together, we talked to him a little bit about what we were looking to do, and so we have these pictures for you. Should we have them on here?
So we're gonna bring the microphone up to you in just a minute. We'll just hold off a minute.
And he has built 1,200 playgrounds in the Woodland area, and he's pretty, if you were here, you would definitely learn from him. He's pretty passionate about playgrounds, and he gave us a proposal, which was for him to do all the work, and then for us to go and find 50 to 100 volunteers for the playground, and he strongly encouraged us to go that route. He is a strong believer that this kind of project brings the community together. He talked a lot to us about different examples of that. Just that it was a great opportunity for people to meet each other, to feel connected to the town, to put, work into something that their kids could enjoy and that the whole town could enjoy. So, I think you can see from what's there, it's vastly different from the playground that is existing.
Does your proposal, or what you might And the proposing also include the cost of removing the existing structures.
So that is not in the proposal that he gave us, so we would have to evaluate that. He did give us ideas about how that could be done and possibly getting donations to do that. He does have a lot of contacts in the area of people who can possibly donate concrete, other pieces of the playground that are not in that proposal.
One of the things, just for the public to know, that we did at this meeting of this board the last time, which actually was my first experience with this board, is that the board has decided by vote not to make it a hard requirement, but a suggestion that any project or proposal that has some type of a self-funding component to it, whether you draw a grant or do some fundraising, just almost whatever degree would be greatly favored. And I know that you folks, you're already in line because you do fundraising, you do finance your own things as well, so that's a good thing. So I'll just throw that out there as a wild idea, but if there was a way that you could raise the money to have the existing structures removed and/or with volunteerism removed, that would be greatly beneficial, because we want to act in the best interest of the town to maximize the funds that are available. So if every proposal comes in with some piece that is self-funding, whether you raise revenue or whether you draw a grant or you get state money, that would be greatly favored. It's not a hard requirement. We're not saying that every proposal must have it, but if we had two competing proposals, the one that would win would be the one that would have some kind of a self-funding mechanism. So, just want to
If
throw that out
possible.
there. If possible,
Right.
exactly.
He seemed to think that the DPW would be best to remove the current structure as well as grade out the area to prepare it for reinstallation by a volunteer effort, best case scenario. And he figured that the town could probably get $100 worth of scrap metal. I don't know how long it will take Bobby to do that with his crew. I would think that if he had a day's worth of effort to do that, that's something that he could probably take care of.
I can tell you, based on the conversations we've had with the Highway Department, and also on a very important meeting, November 3rd, we're gonna talk to the Highway Commissioner about the needs of the department, the needs of the town, that would be very difficult to do, to commit the manpower of several hours to remove that. That's why I'm bringing that up.
So do you think if we will run into any kind of liability concerns about having somebody else come in and rip it out, if we had volunteers come and rip out the structure?
I think the only way to address the liability issue is you have to have it contracted. Somebody has to come in and actually remove it. You can have volunteers do some cleanup, but not actually physically doing the removal, unfortunately. That's just the reality. The Highway Department is really tapped out. They've got to get a lot of roads done, a lot of projects done, sinkholes, all types of issues by November 25th or by Thanksgiving. And they have been stretched to the limit. We're going to be discussing on November 3rd budgetary issues with them, and building perhaps additional staff members. So it's not an easy solution to say, oh, well, no problem, we'll just get the DPW to come in and remove that playground. I'm just giving you advance warning that's gonna not be a very favorable scenario for you. It's just the reality.
So if GBL were to expend money to get that removed or contract with someone,
That
we
would be
could
the
build that
idea.
into the proposal.
That would be the idea.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not telling you how to do the proposal, I'm just guiding you as to what the reality is.
Okay.
Is this a new policy? Maybe I've lived in Groveland too long, but almost everything in Groveland in the past was done by volunteers with their backhoes and this and that and so forth.
Sure.
So like if Bill Dunn were to show up with a bulldozer and just wipe the whole thing out some Saturday afternoon, you'd say that that's probably not, because it's not contracted, that's not how to go about doing it.
There isn't anybody in this room that doesn't believe in the promise and the community spirit of volunteerism. The problem is, we have a lot of potential litigation today that we didn't have in the past. And we're getting counseled, not only by town council, but also our insurance company, that the old way of doing business, like tearing down playgrounds with volunteers, just doesn't float anymore in this day and age. That's just the hard, sad reality of it.
So what about installing them?
We'd have to address that inside.
Volunteer issue.
Well, that's why when the proposal is flowed through this board and it comes to the Board of Selectmen, then we're also gonna be able to apply the legal means to evaluate any nuances like that that we'd have to address.
And I agree with Bob, that's how things have
Yeah.
been done forever and ever, is volunteerism. people
That
putting-
playground
I
has
understand
been
the liability.
updated and upgraded for the last 40 years, over and over again. At one time, the rec budget, when I was on the recreation committee, we appropriated money for one piece of apparatus a year to supplement what was there, and that's how it was put together. But, I mean, Don Greenie, when Don got involved with the Board of Selectmen because of that playground, same
Yeah.
playground,
Exactly.
and the fact of how rotten it was, and it just was non-functional, it was not an asset to the town, so.
It has to be accommodated within what allowable parameters set by the legal team as well. It's just the
And
way it is.
it's a shame, but that's
It's a
the
shame.
way of the world.
It is, because we're probably ending Boy Scout Eagle projects and
Yeah.
everything this way.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
Speaking of lawyers,
You're right about the legal.
Dan McDonald,
You're right about the legal ramifications, however, in terms of risk management, it might be worth exploring some sort of supplemental insurance policy.
Exactly.
I mean, there are a number of nonprofits throughout our society, and they have volunteers, and they can buy event insurance, or you can get some sort of, coverage for a specific task, so you might be able to pick that up. You know, you can look into it. If it's a
Yeah.
nominal cost, it is, the board of the town can set a minimum coverage.
yeah, the minimum coverage, let's say for an event like that, would, my estimate, based on some things we've already gone through, is about $300 to $500. So it's still not that cheap. So to tear down a playground, you have to spend $300 for insurance. You may wanna hire someone for $300 to do it under contract, and then get volunteers to clean up the mess. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yes, I don't know if there was a blanket policy the town could purchase where it would cover, so much.
That's a good point. I
So
should
much
look
for
at it.
volunteers, it might be some blanket coverage or some type of umbrella policy where you can just say, okay, we're gonna cover one event, or we're
Because
gonna
we have to
cover
leave.
a number of
Can we
events.
bring up the library?
Yeah.
And maybe all volunteer organizations or recreational committees could chip in on that at nominal cost and, you know,
It's a good point. I'll bring that up.
fill the bucket with the drops, but certainly spread the cost. You know, to buy one policy piecemeal is probably, might not be cost effective. You know, who knows?
So I don't wanna put you on the spot, but did you have an idea what your project, like Mike's, we know it's 150,000, what?
Well, why don't we give her a
She's
chance
gotta
to
rethink
revisit?
it.
She needs time to revisit.
Yeah, you don't have
We
to.
addressed the
Yeah,
fencing
no,
issue
no.
and the dugout issue.
Okay,
that
that's fine.
We're
No,
aware
different,
of, so
yeah.
that, the number that I have right now really doesn't mean a thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
And you
That's
don't
fair.
need to disclose.
Yeah.
All right.
But we're more than happy to work with you, and, you know, again, contact me if you've got any other questions about putting the proposal together, you know,
Well,
between
now that I
now.
have this new information, I can go back to
Yeah.
the people that I've talked to and just get different numbers. And
Yeah.
my number's gonna just go up.
And just watch this on cable, because there's a lot of information
Sure.
to hand out.
So-
There's some good
How does-
points that haven't been emphasized, so.
Do you want these back for your presentation?
Now, how does Erin, if let's say she begins her proposal and
Yes.
she wants to get in contact with you, or, you know, before we have the next meeting, can she do that?
Yes,
And give you a call and kinda
yes.
get some guidance along the way? So you don't have to wait for the next meeting a month later or something?
When is the next meeting?
Yeah.
We haven't scheduled
I don't
it.
think we're gonna meet, we probably won't
Yeah.
meet until January,
Yeah.
so.
So as you're building your proposal, you may have some questions, you may wanna have someone look at it, and, you know, I
I
would,
think I know enough of you that I can know how to get it if I have a question. I'm persistent.
Yeah,
no, that's
and,
good.
you know, Pam is our representative from the rec, so she can always be the first one
I'm on
to
the
speak with.
And everyone's
then-
on record.
Yeah, so, you know,
I
definitely.
mean, you look at Mike's project, he's got guidance, he's got a design team, so we want you to know that you have guidance here too. You don't have to wait till, to see us again till January and be completely on your own either,
No,
so.
we don't plan that route.
I do have one general question. I'm Lisa Soap. To Pam, do you know what the plan is for the Pines, for the playground at the Pines?
The playground at the Pines, as far as I know, is staying as it is.
Okay.
That, it's not included in the new plans for the Pines. It's just staying there. We had hoped to move it, but it was cost prohibitive to move it.
Okay. I think, because one of our big goals moving forward is to have a excellent town playground. The one at the Pines for the last year and a half has really been not usable. So we're kind of, I think one of our main goals is to get that community, support the community playground and have a, great safe place for the kids to play.
Okay, well,
Great
thank you,
stuff.
thank you.
Thank you.
I think next, we've got some folks here from the library, so I thought I'd give them a chance to tell us a little bit about some of your thoughts.
Well, the library has
Your name, ma'am?
I'm sorry, my name is Barbara Golden. Has a collection of historical things from the town. We don't know what the value is, we don't know if they're worth keeping or not. And we have applied and received a grant through the MDLC, I believe. And this money will allow us to have the collection assessed. And we have an appointment to have that done later this month. And so at this point, we don't know what we're looking for as far as money, because we don't know what it's worth and what it would cost to have any of these items refurbished, and display cases need to be bought, and we don't know any of that stuff yet, so we're sort of in a holding pattern, but this has been very informative.
So we have two representatives from the Northeast Document Conservation Center coming on the 17th, and I'm going to go through everything with
Mhm.
them. And they will assess our needs, and $4,200 will cover that assessment completely. Every piece of paper, every picture, every document, every ledger that we have. And then they will give us a proposal. We've given them the date that it needs to be to apply for the first stage of it,
Yes.
for community preservation funding. We've already started to make some changes and plans on how we will house it, but they'll be advice. So that's $4,200 in a grant to set it up, but we will be coming to community preservation with a proposal for display and digitization. We've already checked on that.
Yep,
We have
yep.
some microfiche, we have, and we have some cataloging already completed. So that's,
Well, now that's another area where if you roll that all in, so, you've already got that grant from,
Yes.
MVLC, so certainly in your proposal, you should put in there that, that's part of it, that was paid for by somebody else, and now you're looking for some more matching funds from CPA to put towards the historic preservation.
So you're talking about storage facility,
Well, storage and exhibition.
exhibition also? Wow, that's
There are
interesting.
things we
in
think-
the present
Yeah, within the
facility,
library.
Wow.
within the space of the present
We
facility.
think some of the things the general public might like to,
Sure.
I'm sure some of them they don't even realize we have.
Yes, Bob. Go on,
Could
Bob.
I,
Go on, Bob.
can I encourage you to look into an archivist too? Somebody-
Absolutely.
The finding aid is the most important thing. Yes, preserving, protecting, absolutely, it's gotta do, that's number one.
Mhm.
And sure, displaying and so forth, but if nobody knows what's there,
Well, exactly.
then, that, you can call it cataloging, but, it's a professional field of an archivist. It's like this vault here in Town Hall. Nobody knows what's in that vault. Nobody. per se. I mean, you don't know what's there. If you were a historian and you wanted to know where the town records are and what's in our town records, nobody knows. And it's the same thing with these records you're talking about. That's what an
we have a
archivist
fairly
does.
good idea, because we had a conservation specialist go over, and Northeast Document Center had come in about 8 years ago and given us evaluation on some of the artwork. And at the time, we came to Greg with the written evaluation, and he put it on the town insurance. So we are insured.
But if nobody knows that you have a Benjamin Parker painting
Right.
hanging on your wall, then it doesn't do anybody any good.
Well, exactly,
Anybody
and that's
who's interested in Benjamin
digitation,
Parker,
yeah.
who was a major figure in the history of this town. But, you know.
So that's
just-
what we'll be talking
All right.
about, and that's what we'll be coming for. And we have a couple of other trustees here who might want to add something to it.
Could I ask another question?
Sure.
Going back to the Washington Park and the current playground equipment there, if we had a contractor volunteer his services who's insured, I would assume that would be sufficient.
Yes, we could.
That would be a
work on it.
blessing.
Because we had someone watching on TV and they volunteered. So
Still have to sign something, but yes, we can get,
that would be, because it may be something we want to move on
Right.
quickly.
That's a great idea. So like if the Bill Dunn of the world wanted to
Yeah.
come in,
He's
he's already
watching
insured.
TV at the moment.
Yeah, go get him.
sign them up.
Okay.
That's a great idea. We can work that out.
Yeah, any kind of in-kind donations, whether they're by someone else, a contractor, or by a group specifically, you know, volunteers do something, that's a value that should be included in your proposal as a cost that isn't gonna have to be paid for by CPA funds. That's
So
great.
who do we need permission from to tear down the existing
Yeah.
playground?
Board of Selectmen.
And when can we get that?
As soon as you can get on an agenda. It won't be November 3rd, but shortly, the meeting after perhaps.
You sure it could be November
Thank
3rd?
We have
November 3rd is pretty
we're gonna,
close.
it doesn't matter that we have a lot of work, it's just that we have to try to wrap things up by 10 o'clock, 10:30. We're gonna push it that night. Just send a message.
We'll make sure that we're on the next agenda.
Yeah, just ask Nancy Lewandowski to get on the agenda for the one after November 3rd, 2 weeks later,
Okay.
just before Thanksgiving.
We, on our committee, we have representatives from historic, from open space, recreation, and also housing. So I'll ask if any of the committee members want to discuss tonight any ideas that you or your contacts in your particular area of concern may be thinking about bringing a proposal to this year to CPC. Bob, are you planning on anything with the cemetery and the historic end?
Yes, we are. So, I'm dual-hatted tonight, so Bruce Adams isn't here. We have an affordable
Yes.
housing reminder of a project that's already started, and the other is the cemetery. The cemetery is a historic landmark. It's registered, and it's one of the most historical features in the town, dating 1723. So we have a preservation plan that's been underway, and that started in 2013, and hopefully it will be finished by this fall. That's what we were told. A lot of the pieces are done. The piece that's lagging is the assessment of every headstone, every monument, every feature within the cemetery. It's a laborious process of looking at everything, 14 and a half acres, and there's just almost thousands of headstones that have to be evaluated. And that's lagging behind. So as the cemetery commission has looked at this, the piece that has been completed is the engineering evaluation of the cemetery. That's the arch, the stone wall in the front, and the receiving crypt, which is as you drive into the cemetery, 1873, is set into the side of the hill and so forth. And there are some issues. If you look carefully, and this is, I mean, these engineers open your eyes as to, you drive by it and you look at it, it looks okay from the outside, very cursory, but when you really look up close and see what the condition is of things, you see that, yes, that we have some issues, and the stone wall is one. That entering border wall, if you particularly go on the backside, rocks are falling out of it, and it really needs to be repointed. One of the caps is cracked and needs to have some attention done to it. The entry arch that you go into, one of the pedestals on the left-hand side is separating from the whole structure itself. And then if you look carefully at the receiving crypt, which is not used anymore, in modern day today, with backhoes and jackhammers and all that, graves are opened year-round, and not caskets aren't put away until the spring we get open the ground. So that's what that facility was for. So we have an estimate, a budgeted estimate from the engineer of approximately $68,000 to have this all fixed. And so we will probably be making that proposal to the committee to have that historic piece of it done. What would we really like to do, this is somewhat on a personal level, is the old burying ground. The old burying ground with all those slates, and you go in there and it's not just an eyesore. I mean, it is the early history of East Bradford and of Groveland. And you can just see it. The headstones are like this and that, and they're cracked and breaking and delaminating and so forth. And perhaps in another year, we'll be in a position to come back looking for some work to fix those. Georgetown did it with their cemetery, the Union Cemetery. They have two cemeteries in Georgetown. If you go out 133 to 95, that old cemetery that's there is the oldest one. It has a cast iron fence around it. They put a lot of money into that, and they use CPA money to restore it, but it looks really good. And all of those headstones that were all messed up, mostly all slates, all schist, all real old headstones have all been conserved. So that's basically the cemetery piece.
I want to add to that, Bob and his group this summer worked on the restoration of the Civil War headstones, is that correct?
Still working on it.
Still working on it. It's been a fascinating project. They've hired a technical team to come in and actually refurbish the stones, which is a science unto itself. But a lot of the sweat equity was put in by Bob and his group this summer. There is another component in the cemetery that also has Revolutionary era soldiers buried there. And last year, we were approached by a resident of our town, Danelle Gatom. I spoke with her today. She was supposed to be here this evening, but she was not feeling well. Danelle has reiterated what she told us last year, that if there's a focused project to renovate, restore, or have anything to do with the Revolutionary era part of the cemetery, she would be involved in that project by making a private donation for a portion of the cost. There isn't a specific amount that was exchanged either last year or in this morning's conversation. Danelle is a very successful writer, professional writer, and her genre deals with that part of history, American Revolutionary era. She is probably, I would describe her, she wouldn't describe herself, but certainly an expert in that area of history, very passionate about it, and she agrees with me and Bob and a lot of people in town that the cemetery is really a historic gem also, and it does need to come up to a standard to reflect that. So we're very fortunate that when a proposal is written, and I'll go ahead and work with Bob on that. Bob's done most of it anyways, but I'll certainly be a co-writer to that proposal. Danelle will sponsor that proposal and also provide some financial support to it. And that will all be expressed over time as we progress towards that piece. But you think now that's about a year away before?
I think it probably is. There are
Still-
35 Revolutionary War soldiers buried there.
35,
We know where they
amazing.
all are.
Unbelievable.
And it's just now a matter of restoring their headstones and restoring the markers, which is exactly what we've been doing with the Civil War.
So very likely, next year at this time, we're gonna reiterate Janelle's commitment for the third time. It's just, we have to get to other things as well, but it's coming, and she very enthusiastically wanted to assure the board that her commitment is just as strong today as it was last year, and I'll let her know that it's about a year away still, so, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bob, can you tell us a little bit about the affordable housing
Right.
piece that may be coming?
This is kind of a warning order. It may happen or it may not happen. As you know, at the 2013 town meeting, you appropriated $70,000 to do a feasibility study for building an affordable housing unit out back here behind the police station in front of the Groveland Pines, the senior housing back there. There's roughly a 1 acre lot of land back there that's owned by the town, and that's what we eyed for doing this. So there's two parts of the 70K. One is, the first 30K was to do what's called the financial plan / pro forma of the property, and that's basically to run the numbers. How many units do you have to build? How much should the rents be for those units? What are the construction costs? What are the maintenance and upkeep costs if the town were to build this facility? And it would be obviously senior housing, over 55 housing is who it would be geared for. And that has not been completed. So $40,000 additional dollars was also appropriated at that town meeting to do then the fully engineered site plan for the property if we decide to go ahead with the results of the 30K feasibility piece. And the plan, has not been completed. The contract is let, the engineer is working on it, but we have not received any report back yet. And once we get that report, then we'll know whether or not we're gonna go forward. So obviously, we gotta get that results in, and if we're gonna go ahead with, and the big hit will be for the actual construction, which is what we'd be going in for this coming cycle, if it all works out. And we don't know at this point
Yeah.
if it is.
So you don't know yet. That may or may not come forward this year. Okay. Pam, do we have any other recreation groups that are interested in looking for funds this year?
I actually thought soccer might appear, because they figure they need a playground too.
Shanahan?
At Shanahan, yes.
They need parking too.
What?
I'm not on the committee, but they need parking. My kids play soccer and parking over there.
Parking is an issue there.
Safety issue. I've parked on the street there. I don't know, it doesn't say no parking, but I've been there for 5 o'clock practice. Cars will come down Main Street at 45 miles an hour, and I'm getting out of the car with my kids, so who's gonna get killed there? All right, there's plenty of land there around the perimeter. You can angle park. There's a lot of things you can do. But they need parking over there to make that safe. It's not safe. And there's soccer this time of year. Well, it's still going on. I got soccer practice tomorrow with my daughter Mary at 5 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, it's might as well be midnight. So you get kids in a situation over there that's not safe. The roadway's not very well lit. There should be lights on that field, and there should be adequate parking away from the sidewalks that people walk on. I think it's a significant safety issue for this town, and you talk about liability. I see it. I live it.
And I think that the rec committee itself is gonna go look at the Pines Playground now that we've heard. Because I know it isn't in the plans.
Can I comment on the playgrounds? I mean, I didn't hear the whole thing, but you know, when I go to baseball at Washington Park, I have a son Max, and he'll play baseball. My other 2 children that don't play baseball will play on the jungle gym or whatever you call it over there. And it's somewhat of a babysitter while the
their child's doing what they're doing. So in soccer, it makes sense, or in any sports facility, it makes sense to have an adjacent playground to the sports facility for, the toddlers and the other kids that just aren't involved in the game and simply aren't interested or focused enough to watch the game for an hour. So it makes sense to me that, to pair those up within the town.
I'm hoping we will hear from the soccer people. I've had a 10-year coaching history with soccer. I've experienced what you've experienced with 4 of my children there, the dangers and so forth. Parking lots are the worst problems to have, because they're very expensive. You can't get Chapter 90 money, it's not like a road. You can't raise enough money to build a parking lot. That's why we have a problem there, and in other areas, because they're just very, very expensive, and funding sources are just not there.
But if you could put a curb cut at the beginning of Shanahan Field, there's room on the right-hand side between where they have the goals and everything. I walk my dog around there. Says, well, dog's on the field, but not on the field. But there's plenty of room there. If you made a gravel parking lot, certainly with a curb cut, you can do that without a tremendous amount of expenditure. And it's not used during the winter when we get in the mud season. So it really is kind of a seasonal use property in Shanahan for the fall. And I think gravel or some sort of crushed stone would be a low-cost solution to that problem over there.
Well, that's the
Curb cut wouldn't cost.
That's the purpose of this meeting. You're expressing a need, now we're waiting for a proposal. Are you prepared to produce one?
Yeah, I make
Okay.
a proposal.
No,
There'd
seriously.
be a curb cut at the Shanahan. Crushed stone truck in there, maybe we get a volunteer and a truck to dump it.
We have to put it in writing,
All
Mr.
right.
McDonald.
I'll whip one out right
And
now.
on the back there, there's forms. And I would also check with the Groveland Youth Soccer, because I can tell you that they've had proposals in the past, and they've got some great ideas and some energy and enthusiasm, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You could have my copy.
Groveland Soccer had a major proposal, was it 2 years ago, for parking, and it didn't happen.
Didn't
It may have
happen.
been major. I mean, mine's minor, mine's minimal
Right.
impact.
Well, this was a
Mine is
whole,
low cost, it's budget, it's about one step above dirt road, without the erosion.
You'll be
So
surprised
I
how
like practical
expensive it is.
solutions, low cost, and like I said, all kidding aside, it's a seasonal use location. It's not really used in the wintertime, unless people are cross-country skiing over there, but you don't need parking for that, so I just think for the, whatever, 8 weeks you play soccer there, I understand the neighbors, like car door slamming and everything, but it'll get them further away from the houses on Main Street, which are on the opposite side of the road. So it might be beneficial to the neighbors on that street. One, you got safety, which is always first and foremost, paramount, okay? Secondary issue would be, it would get the cars away from the neighbors across the street, right? And if you push the cars further back towards the river, not on the river, in the river, but you know what I'm saying? You probably get 30 cars away from that road. All you need is a curb cut. Couple tons of crushed stone. Couple 10 wheels.
Well, hopefully we'll hear from the soccer folks. That would
Yep.
be great.
Yep.
That'd be really good.
Be the lone soccer guy,
I have a proposal.
I was just gonna ask Claire
Claire
first
has a
about
proposal,
anything historic coming down the road. Have you heard anything? Are there any interest out there?
Well, there may be something coming from VZ
Okay,
under historic. It was declared a historic site a few years back, probably about 8 years ago by
Yep.
the Historic Commission.
mhm,
And so we have received some CPA funds in the past to do some much-needed work. One was a big electrical job that was done to upgrade what we had. So it's in the works.
Mhm.
I don't want to go any further
sure,
than that.
sure,
I mean, it's not going to involve a lot of money.
mhm. Yeah, those are the good ones, the ones that don't involve too much money. Okay, Joe, you had to,
I have an idea. I know that I think maybe 10 years ago, people have been talking about a so-called bridge committee. There was a committee that was formed. It was charged by the Board of Selectmen and for the purpose of studying At the base of the, now we actually have a bridge, the base of the bridge, possibly some public parking. There has also been a perennial discussion for about 10 years that potentially at some point in the future, the Groveland Getty building property could become available for sale. And that could potentially be a candidate for CPA money if the town presented itself as a willing buyer. So therefore, I would be interested not in bringing up old proposals that were done, but actually securing some CPA money now to do a study, to see what the feasibility is of building a parking lot, assuming that the acquisition of that property is made. Here's my concern, why I don't want to use an old idea. I've learned recently by taking a walk at one of our properties on the development about the 200-foot buffer requirement from the Merrimack River. So from the Merrimack River, you can't have anything inside of 200 feet. You can't have a gazebo, you can't have a car shop, you can't have a parking lot. In understanding how the 200-foot buffer works, it's also not land feet, it's actual feet. So for example, if the river comes up to a shoreline behind Groveland Getty, you have to kind of draw an imaginary line up to the top of that hill, and that crest of that hill and that shoreline has to be 200 feet apart. So if I remove the Groveland Getty building today, I can tell you without having to take out a tape measure that we're inside the 200-foot buffer. So if we acquired that land at an expensive cost and then found out that we can only put 4 cars there, that would be a very interesting topic of discussion at a town meeting, and heads would roll. So I would not be interested in looking at what's been done in the past other than perhaps incorporating that into a new plan, but I would look at asking this committee and asking the Board of Selectmen for money, and I have no idea what it would cost to have a professional assessment of what could be done there for public parking in the event that we do acquire that land. So that's my interest. I don't have a proposal. I'll work with Mike on developing a proposal. That'll be my 2 projects, one working with Bob with the cemetery, even though that seems to be a bit delayed until next year, and then this one here. And I'll present that to the Board of Selectmen and get their input to see if, you know, what their idea is as well. So that's my interest. Thank you.
As I mentioned before, it's important to note that CPA funds cannot pay for a parking lot. So, for instance, in a case like this, we could build a park with a parking lot, but we couldn't just build a parking lot.
And I'm thinking of a park up there with a gazebo,
Yeah.
a beautiful
Yeah.
bluff overlooking the Merrimack River. It's not my vision, other people have that vision
Yep.
as well, but
Yep.
that 200-foot buffer scares the heck out of me. So.
Dan?
Is it true that CPA funds can be used for maintenance of existing recreation facilities?
No,
Not at all.
no. Can't be used for maintenance. That's, you know, that's the one area I think it kind of reflected what they're doing over at Washington Park is they want to avoid anything that's gonna be, you know, maintaining or, you know, kind of doing things that should have been done a long time ago kind of thing.
How is it a matter of semantics? Can you expand the existing facility?
Yes, yes. You know, it's kind of up to us to decide that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's a gray area, is it
Yeah.
subjective? Can you expand the existing parking to?
Yes,
to
yes.
augment, to supplement the
exactly.
needs of the existing
Right.
facility if in fact they are inadequate, which is what we have at Shanahan Field and Washington Park. You have an existing facility that it has inadequate accessory parking spaces, and the ripple effect of that are safety issues in and out of those facilities.
Right, right. So, you know, for
so-
instance,
so-
on.
Is it a matter of interpretation and
Well,
spin?
it is, but, you know, I think if we got a proposal that was just for a parking lot, that was all that it was, we couldn't do it. But if we got a proposal, say in the case of something like Washington Park, where the parking lot was one component of everything that was gonna be done there. And it may be that you didn't do it even all in one phase, maybe you did it in multiple phases, but as long as it was a component of a bigger picture, then it probably could be done. That's what I have seen they have done in other cities and towns.
2 years ago, at town meeting, it was approved for bathroom facilities in
Right,
Shanahan. So
right.
Could the parking and curb cut, that sort of thing be tacked onto that?
It could be, could be.
Make it part of. one.
Definitely talk to, Steve Merrill, because, he's kind of been guiding along that proposal, so I'm not quite sure where they're at right now.
My understanding is that parking was proposed years ago. And
Yes.
was shot down. I don't know if it was, if there was plan A, B, and C. I mean, there's certainly, there's the expensive way of doing things, and then
Yeah.
there's the degrees of it, so.
There's no matching funds, there's no chapter 90 money, it's too expensive to raise money. Parking lots are a nightmare. They really are, very difficult to,
The Pines doesn't have pavement.
what's that?
The Pines doesn't have pavement.
Pines had a tremendous revenue source, however, based on the selling of the mining of the hill that created the revenue to create what's been done there, so.
Is there a plan to pave that, or is it gonna stay just gravel? I mean, it's a dirt road, really.
I don't know, actually,
And
I
the
believe
seashell.
it's
I heard it's going to be paved.
yeah. So, that has its own funding source.
Right, but what I'm saying is similarly to the Pines, that is not paved, and it hasn't been paved since I've lived in town, almost 10 years now. It just, we exist with a recreation facility with a dirt road, gravel, and there's, I think, seashells down there at the boat landing. And that's worked and functioned fine. It's been a low-cost solution. So I'm in agreement with you that there's no money for hot top. It's pricey. But the issue is getting cars off the street for the reasons I've brought up without the cost, and the way to do that is don't hot top it.
I'm looking forward to seeing your proposal.
All right. When does it have to be submitted?
December.
Tonight the deadline?
No. What's the
December,
deadline?
December 31.
December 31st.
If I team up with Merrill, if he'll let me, I don't know.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he's got some great ideas, Steve. He's been very, very effective in managing that space.
Spit what I have.
Steve's done a great job. He'd be a great resource for all of us.
Yeah, he's a great soccer director.
Okay, so does anyone else on the committee have anything else to bring up? No? Okay, so I'll make a motion to close our hearing and end our meeting. Somebody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.